All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. It's 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. This is David Sturts with Cooperative Strategies. Thank you all very much for joining us again this week as we continue our summer series webinar, interviewing folks around the country, states, local educational leaders, just getting insights, perspectives into what's happening, boots in the ground in their respective districts regarding reopening planning for the summer. As many of you know, so I'll be brief on sort of the background here, but this started about 10 weeks ago with Mary Fuller from the 21st Century Fund and National Council on School Facilities, looking into building some comprehensive reopening strategy guidance, really with stakeholders, not dictated down to, but collaborated with. And so that a couple of weeks ago, Mary has stepped off and working with the team and putting together a website that will serve as sort of a landing page for all the different kind of guidance that we went through, and budget assistance and tools and so forth, planning tools. And we're taking this summer just to do more of a get the anecdotes, get the what's going on in your neck of the woods kind of approach from folks who are working in preparing for the fall, and opening up to Q&A within this group. So I just wanted to welcome and thank Dr. Jeffrey Wilson, who is with us today from Huntsville City Schools, Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City. So I'm going to pop over that slide with Mary Filardo. She'll hopefully be able to join us as we discussed to give us a little federal update and discuss some ideas we're talking about for the fall. So real brief introduction, and then let him introduce himself. Dr. Wilson, Director of Operations for Huntsville City Schools. Prior to that, was assistant professor at West Point, and prior to that, a lieutenant colonel in logistics for the United States Army. Welcome, really glad to have him here, has a wealth of experience in and outside of schools, and had the opportunity to know and work with him for, gosh, it was like 8 years ago, I think, when we started, 6-7 years, something like that.
Yes, it was a while.
So, yeah. So Huntsville, Alabama, we've obviously, Space Center there. Any of your kids have that middle school trip planned to Huntsville and begging you to go, unlike mine was. So we got 24,000 students, 2,600 teachers, administrators, and staff, 37 schools, 6 high schools, 5 middle and junior highs, 6 P8s, and 20 pre-K 5s. So, Dr. Wilson, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. It's an honor to be here. And I recognize some names out there, and I just say hi to everyone I know, and look forward someday to meeting a lot of you who I'm meeting virtually today.
Right. So this, as those of you involved know, this is very much your platform for Q&A and discussion. So as questions come up to your mind, we use the chat heavily. So please, go to that chat there and start popping in your questions. We have some formulaic questions that we put in here because we want to get some different folks to respond to the same set of questions as a basis, but that's not it. We would like you to, pop up with your questions and comments for Dr. Wilson, for anybody else in the group. So please mute while he's talking, if you don't mind, and let's use the chat. So, Dr. Wilson, first question: where are you getting data to help you open in the fall and plan for that? And sort of behind this question is the real challenge. Doesn't seem to, somebody wouldn't mind muting. I think we got somebody who's on the phone here. Hold on, let me mute all.
Yeah, give him a call.
And I'll just unmute Dr. Wilson. There we go. So we have not a lack of information. It's filtering through and deciding what's the pertinent information, what's the best information. Where are you going? How are you doing that?
Well, one of the things I learned from the Cooperative Strategies webinar I was on about 6 weeks ago, where we talked about capacity analysis, was that people all around the country are asking the same questions, and people all around the country are getting, very vague answers from higher authority, with that
Right.
state or federal. And in Alabama, the ALSDE, the Alabama State Department of Education, has left a lot of decisions as we've gone through this crisis up to the local educational agencies, the LEAs, which on the one hand is great. I mean, that our state superintendent, Dr. Eric Mackey, realizes that cookie cutter solutions, at the state
Right.
level probably won't work. But on the flip side of that, there's a lot of burden on the local superintendents to look at all the different risk assessment factors that are in their local and particular area, consult with public health officials and the neighboring superintendents. One of the things that we have here in northern Alabama, and we're very blessed with this, is that the three main school systems here in northern Alabama, Madison City, Madison County schools, and of course Huntsville City schools, very much a three-legged stool. And in the 8 years that I've been here, and I know this was true way before that, the superintendents have made a great effort to synchronize procedures in things like crisis response, weather event response. Are we all going to close, or are we all going to open, or are we all going to delay?
Sure.
And that relationship has paid a lot of dividends here in COVID. And so and of course we've got Redstone Arsenal here, which is a huge engine for North Alabama. But obviously, the people at all three school systems encompass Redstone Arsenal, and so they give us another impetus for trying to coordinate and synchronize to the best of our ability. But in terms of receiving data, obviously our main guidance comes from the state superintendent, and within the left and right limits that the ALSDE gives us, we risk mitigation decisions to the maximum extent possible, coordinated with the other districts in our area.
Okay. And so as far as like data on, how to plan for things like, how are you going to load your buses? That's a dominant question for many folks. Am I doing it strict social distancing on a bus? Am I sort of just saying we're going to do half? We won't do full 6 feet apart, because then I can only get 10, 11 kids. I'm going to do 50% capacity because I can't get them all to school. Like how are you making, those, where are you getting your data to make those decisions that are kind of in the gray zone?
Right. Well, I mean, the Cooperative Strategies webinar that I attended was really transformative in my thinking, in terms of laying out an actual rubric for both classroom capacity at reduced levels and also bus capacity at reduced levels. And I commend you and the partners you work with for that. And anybody on here who's working in a K-12 school district knows that right now we're being inundated with virtual business cards, trying to sell us things, and get your face shields here, get your masks here, and but very few are saying, hey, could we lend a hand, without opening your wallet? Can we lend a hand and give you some tools? And I can't overstate the value of things like this. But like other forums that we have, I think like the other K-12 systems out there, we're looking around. I mean, we're punching and shooting around the internet. We're looking at best practices. We're paying. If I see a 30-second news spot on something that's happening in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'll Google Albuquerque City Schools, or but I think
Right.
that's what we're all doing, because there is no we are, because there is no one right answer, right? I mean, and almost everything is caveated. Even the guidance that you do see is often caveated with to the maximum extent practicable. I mean, when realizing,
absolutely right,
realizing that there's not unlimited resources, even with the CARES Act, and that CARES Act money, and I think the other K-12 systems other agencies here will concur that once you start getting down to brass tacks, that the CARES Act is a wonderful thing and it's generous, but that money burns up pretty quickly when you start to actually prioritize. And so it really is a matter of a continual risk assessment and a continual prioritization assessment. What is the public health situation? What is our most likely course of action, and where do we need to put our resources?
Yeah, and Jeff, I'm actually ask a question from last week's webinar when we had the folks from California Department of Ed on, which was really interesting. And one of the questions we didn't have time to get to was Guy's, who's on this call. And Guy asked the question, I'm going to paraphrase Guy, so unmute if I butcher it. But you were asking a question about, he was asking a question about liability. So when we were asking this question of, the folks at the Department of Facilities and Transportation for the state, like, how do you navigate providing specific enough guidance to actually materially help people plan with broad enough guidance to be applicable to multiple stakeholders, and knowing that in the middle of those is a liability question as well as a practical question, which is, when we're all kind of fishing for what the exact response is, when there is no right or one or answer, one of the concerns is, well, what's the minimum standard to be considered, acting in good faith and not being reckless? How are you addressing that kind of question of liability, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I think that maybe in the last webinar somebody mentioned having the board attorney on speed dial, but I think that quite honestly, our board attorney has been a great source of information. Here we have had a good close relationship with our board attorney, Lanier, Ford, Shaver, and Payne here in Huntsville, and quite honestly, we have the board attorney involved in these discussions, and I'm going to give a specific example of one kind of thing where,
Please.
Okay, all of us are struggling with the need to provide services to children who really need the face-to-face, and of course
right.
our special education department, over the course of the last part of the school year when we were virtual, obviously was getting a lot of requests that for something on site, and the more we thought about that, and the board attorney was instrumental in these discussions, was that we really need to do something here in the summer. And so, of course, from a facilities point of view, that you're nervous about that. The first students that we're bringing back into a school building are some of our special education students. And so on July 6th, we will start what we're calling the extended school year program. It will go from the 6th to the 30th. And so what we did when we received that direction a few weeks ago was we started a rigorous planning process, and we started to think, we really kind of accelerated all the things we were already thinking about to open, if we have to open school in a reduced capacity mode in the fall. And we just said, okay, we don't know what we're going to do in the fall yet, but we're going to go ahead and do some of these things. We're going to lay out the classroom capacity for social distancing. We're going to set up the school in accordance with the idea that there's going to be the 9 feet of social distance. We're going to allocate that number of rooms, and so we're doing this. And of course, the board attorney is part of that. The other thing that we're doing, when the state authorized at the end of May the beginning of athletics and extracurricular, they opened the door pretty wide, pretty quick, as those of you from Alabama here will thankfully, this was May May 24th or so, and the state superintendent said, well, as of 1 June, you can do athletics and extracurricular. And I'm very thankful for our superintendent, Mrs. Christy Finley, who responded to the staff's advice to delay that till the 8th of June to give us the time to set conditions, to give us the time to develop a hard and fast rubric for how we were going to do this, and what the procedures were going to be across the different sports and the different extracurricular activities, to be able to do a training for all the coaches and staffs who were going to do extracurricular activities, and then to rehearse that. And I've got some pictures that I'll show you when you give me the nod to do that, as to what some of that looked like. And then so when we started the voluntary athletic practices and extracurricular meetings on the 8th of June, we were ready. And I'll paraphrase one of our board attorneys, Chris Pape, who said, "You're doing everything that a organization could do in good faith to perform a responsible risk mitigation and carry on the activities that you're chartered to carry on, understanding that there's always going to be some risk." And just for me, I mean, I've become quite fond of trying to not use phrases like, "we're going to keep you safe," or "I'm going to keep you safe," because I don't control COVID, right? I don't control what COVID-19 does. But what I can do as the director of operations is to ensure that a thorough risk assessment is done in all these things that we're doing, and that we have mitigated risk to the maximum extent practicable, given the situation we're in. I hope that answers.
Yeah, so Jeff, that's really interesting. So you actually have on your PowerPoint to share some information about the athletics as well? About your opening?
Well, I'm going to show some pictures of what we did with the training, but I can talk through some of the things.
Yeah, I tell you what, if you don't mind just screen sharing now. So I've got three, questions coming in on the chat saying, hey, it'd be great. I'd love to see those plans or anything like that. If you could share with the group. There's different ways we can do that, Jeff. And then a couple questions that came up specific. Are outside users allowed to use buildings also, or just the fields? And are you using a waiver process for students in sports activities? So as you share and talk through it, if you can address those in your presentation.
Sure. Right. Well, what we were doing, if people are interested in that level of detail, I will just oops, sorry, some reason I was supposed to go full screen. There we go. Let me just quickly, basically what we did is we formed, I'll go through this very quickly. When we got the guidance to move forward, we formed a risk mitigation team. And you notice here we had our chief academic officer, our athletic director, our health services coordinator has been in every meeting. And myself, our facilities coordinator handles custodial. And then we brought in, some coaches and some band directors and some experts. And you could see the timeline there was very tight, about a week and a half, and that we went ahead and trained by feeder pattern. We took about a week to develop the training package, and then we went ahead and conducted the training, and these were these were the basic topics that we went over. How are you going to ingress? What are the expectations? What kind of staffing do you need to have in the parking lot? The bottom line is that, the students are under control from the moment they get to the campus to the moment they leave. So, football player gets out of the car, coach is in the parking lot. We've got the 6-foot distance markers there. They line up for the check-in, the temperature check and the check-in. We're very rigorous about the 1 to 12. That was the guidance we had received from the Alabama Athletic Association. Is the 1 to 12 in groups?
1 to 12, what, Jeff?
I'm sorry, 1 faculty to 12 students.
Like 12 students in like a sort of just on the field kind of thing, or like
one faculty to 12 students in any kind of activity. So if you're doing a warm up, or if you're doing a cheerleading drill, or whatever it is you're doing, that 1 per 12, and then keeping the groups separate, because that's another big piece of this is you keep the groups separate for if you have to do the contact tracing, and then of course the sanitation protocols. And we went into the level of detail is and we had several Zooms throughout the week, and we were glad that we did it, because we went down into the level of detail of, okay, water. So one coach is assigned to put on the rubber gloves, and to use the one scoop from the ice machine that only the coach gets to, and then prepares the water and puts that out there, and then that coach with the rubber gloves is the only one who touches the spigot, and then the players come up in the container that they have provided, because no more of we don't provide the containers for the water, and the player holds it out there, the one coach pours the water, and this kind of thing. So you're this level of detail about everything, including the water, how are we wiping off benches between lifts, kid picks up paper towel after his lift, coach is handling the bottle, coach squirts, kid wipes, trash can, next kid, right? And it's that kind of rigorous level of detail. And we put all our basic procedures in a letter that we sent out. We had an available hard copy and also sent it out digitally, and asked the kids to bring that the first day. And part of it was requiring masks, because we didn't want anybody to get the idea that Huntsville City Schools had some kind of endless supply of disposable masks for that one kid who just happened to forget theirs today. And so the guidance we made clear to the parents is that, football player shows up without a mask, football player gets back in the car and goes home. And I will say both the families and the students and the faculties have really bought in, because everybody wanted to get back to practice, right? I mean, everybody really wanted to get back to doing what they love to do. And so, we laid it out clearly. And then, what we did was we modeled the way. And so when we did the training, it was real important to the risk mitigation committee that we do for our training for the coaches and staffs just what we expected them to do when they got the kids there. So you could see the social distancing markers. You could see the supervision there leading in from the parking lot. You could see a bottom left picture. That's health services coordinator Andrea Penn, and she was popping them with the touchless thermometer right there. And we bought those, by the way. That was the first thing we bought with the CARES money. Is the district bought a couple hundred of these touchless thermometers that we're signing out to the schools. And it's an investment we need to make. And then of course she was also asking the questions, have you, had any symptoms, these questions. And then you could see there, we social distanced between the the temperature and the sign-in table, and then to the left there, they're going to go into the theater, and you see the athletic director there motioning one of the assistant principals to her seat. And we had, it's like Disney World. You don't get to pick where you sit. That when you're coming into an auditorium, you're going to refill back to or front to back, and then egress back to front. And so the coaches knew that this level of seriousness, and you can see how this is our premier theater, the Lee High School theater magnet. But with social distancing, we've got 90 on the bottom deck and then 40 on the top deck, and you can see the caution tape there. And then that's just going over the checklist. But so, I mean, if you, just to give you an idea of the, of the level of detail that we were going in there for that. And I don't know if you wanted me to talk about classrooms yet or not, or.
Sure. I mean, go for it, Jeff. This is kind of loose. I mean,
Okay.
There's been several folks who requested, hey, is this an open document? Could we get a copy of this document somewhere? Is this by chance public, or is this internal?
No, I mean, it is public. The first one there is public. We presented it at a board meeting. And David, maybe
Okay.
the best thing for me to do would be maybe to just share that with you, and you could share it out to your group. I mean, would that be okay?
Yeah. Tell you,
Okay.
we'll do that. If you want to share it with me, we'll send it to our entire mailing list, because not everybody can make this Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time kind of thing every week, but we'll send it to the whole mailing list.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I guess to just finish up, and hopefully I'm answering that question
Sure.
about, equity and things that, and liability, that's out there. But I mean, really, it's, are we responsibly mitigating risk? And then, as we've now been at practice now for, a few weeks, we have had some situations where, kid comes in and says, that he was, somebody in his family was, exposed, and so there's
Okay.
been some activities that have temporarily shut down, because of that,
Okay.
right? And so those follow-on measures, really a constant dialogue with the health services coordinator about how to react to those situations, which everybody who's tried to do this, has been facing, right?
So this is really interesting. I didn't know this. So you're several weeks in now, and it sounds like it's working. You having to adjust sometimes. Some kids having to go out, but it sounds, Jeff, like it's working for you. Not ideal, but
and it is. Yeah, and part of it, I think a big part of it is that there is an internal motivation there that the coaches and these particular activities really want to get back to it. And of course we're hoping that, when we go back in the fall, I mean, every school district is hoping that, you'll get all the buy-in, that we've gotten
Right.
with the athletics and extracurricular when it's, coming to school, right? And we're excited about the ESY program, because these students need these services, and the special ed department, is eager. I mean, they want to get back with their kids. It was all teachers do. And
tell me about that, Jeff, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're planning for the SPED students, because that kind of goes into that second question we had up there, is about equity, which of course there's no one right answer to that. But so what is an equity lens that you're looking right now? And part of it, what I heard you all say, was we realized that our special education population was the most at risk, if you will, from learning loss, from what I inferred, if that's correct, with the online learning after we had to close in the spring. So we need to bring them back early.
Right.
And so am I right in saying that was kind of the thought process, or is there what else was involved?
Well, I mean, because I'm not a special ed person, but learning loss, part of it, yes, but also the other face-to-face services, the other
Okay.
face-to-face interaction with the students that,
Okay.
just no matter, you just isn't the same virtually.
Sure.
So when we met with the special ed department and we got the lay of the land, about they were thinking about 50 students. We had picked, normally, we do an extended summer program for special education. Normally that takes place in 2 schools. We pick an elementary and then we pick another one, but we did it at one. We've got the Morris building, which you're familiar with, David. The one of the newer schools. It's a P8 configuration building, and so we had plenty of room there. And so we're taking over one wing on the ground floor, 8 classrooms with a set of restrooms, and a door that we can seal off. And then what we did was we took the protocols that we were developing for the school year, and let me just go back to the webinar that you did about 6 weeks ago with the capacity, and I took a lot away from that, and I used the basic rubrics that you had provided to start to plan for the hard thing. And the committee that I co-chaired at the district level to try to plan for the various configurations for reset in the fall, we focused on planning for the hard thing because, and now everybody here around the country is going to have different terms for this, but basically the way we're looking at it, and I do want to caveat for anybody, the superintendent was just down at the superintendent's conference, and she's back today. She's doing graduations today and tomorrow. I have not received what she learned. We've been working on a plan to roll out right behind what Dr. Mackey rolls out either tomorrow or early next week. But right now, that plan is still based upon a lot of assumptions that we don't know are valid yet until we get to sit down with her and say, okay, this is the real left and right limits. So, it's kind of, we're in an interesting moment right now. But what we have been doing for the past, couple of months, like everybody has, is trying to plan for, for three basic configurations. And what we're calling them right now, provisional terms, is traditional, which is, okay, if we went back every kid every day, 70 kids on a 70 passenger bus, 30 kids in a 30 kid classroom. The other end of that, we're calling remote, full virtual. If we went, like we did in March and April and May, where, everybody was virtual. But in the middle, we're using the term high flex, hybrid flexible, where the idea might be some sort of staggered schedule where we brought about half of the kids back on any given day. And in your webinar a few weeks ago, you gave several different models for that, AABB, cleaning day. I mean, and we considered, believe me, a lot of different models, and the one we decided to plan for was a straight up A day, B day. You're just going throughout the school year. Very much actually like what we did at West Point. We had 1 and 2 day that went through the whole year. And basically the idea here is that, if Jeff Wilson might be an A day kid and I come to school on the B day, I stay home, but I have work to do in that class still for that same teacher. You're a B-Day kid, David, and you flip that. And so what I did was taking a lot of the ideas. We knew that the time-intensive thing would be to try to plan for what does that, and I think you in your webinar used the term COVID capacity. With this, what we're calling reset capacity. And I chose the term reset because it's broader than just reopening. It's broader than just return. We're really thinking about resetting our entire azimuth if we went with this option. And so what I did was I worked with using the 9-foot model that you all had suggested as sort of a best practice, with the 3-foot personal space and
then the 6 foot.
And the 6 foot. I gave them 4x4 quadro graph paper because the thing that I took from there is how do you scale that with 37 schools? How do I make sure that every diagram is really to the same standard? So I thought, well, we use a standard scale graph paper with 1 square per foot and then do the manipulatives that way, that gives us a common base of reference. And so, and I commend my wife for making the first set of manipulatives. My wife, Marcia, cut those out of fun foam, and notice we gave them a stencil, but then we got the stencil and one of the secretaries here made a set of manipulatives for every principal. And the homework they had, I designed a capacity worksheet and using the diagrams, what their charter was. And you notice here, here in operations, we got all the materials, we made the books, We printed
Right.
the work instructions, and so all they needed to do was come down to the warehouse here, because we got the mail in the warehouse bins.
Pick up their homework, essentially.
Yeah, pick up their homework, and then they had a week to do this. And then I wasn't able to get out to every school personally, obviously, but their charter was to make this diagram, to use the manipulatives, to make the circles, and then put that behind. So you got a master here, and then you've got a classroom worksheet with one of these for every classroom. But on the master, they could take their, and what we did was we used the best data set that we have, which is the school year 1920 database, and say, look, don't think about this year, think about the year you just ended. You've got all of that, you know what that is, use that enrollment.
Okay, the enrollments you're talking about.
Yeah, use that enrollment.
You're talking about capacities and enrollment, floor plans, or whatever.
Yeah, so you take that, and then once you get your capacity, so say my enrollment was 500, and so I cut that down the middle, I've got to have 250 a day. So the thing that you get here by doing, and I followed your stair-step methodology, that your classrooms first, then looking at large interior spaces, and then looking at exterior spaces, and then try to gauge those capacities. And obviously, it gets a little bit woolly when you get out to the exterior spaces. Hard to do that. But most of the schools, in fact, really all of the schools, were able to get capacity in their building, by using creatively all their interior spaces. And obviously they had a lot of ideas about ways you could use exterior. But the thing is that, that we have these, and after they turned in all their data, we've racked and stacked all that. And if we have to go to this model, I'm convinced, and I've told the superintendent this, the principals are ready, because when I went out there and met with them, they were proud to show me their books and turn the pages and looking at some
their homework. I mean, they're good at school.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
And
so they turn in.
That's right. And the creative ways that they're using, because particularly with ingress and egress, because obviously now one of the things that we did do in this model, and again, I don't know if we're going to do this or not, but again, just to emphasize, we plan for the hard thing. We plan to temperature check every kid every day. And what that meant was completely shattering the glass on your old traffic pattern and your old, car line, and thinking about things like, okay, you have a school where Montesano Elementary, that what she, said she'd do is bring the car line around to the cafeteria. You got a door there, pop the thermometer. You've got the buses that can come to the gym door around back, and then configure your gym like, an airport style customs line. And again, you got the kids inside, so they're not vulnerable outside, but you're doing it, right? And of course, you can imagine that the high schools were hardest to think about, especially we have two high schools that have about 2,000 kids. And so they're...
Yeah, can I...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff, I just want to pause on a couple things here because it's interesting. So you're repurposing your gyms as a queuing station for checking in, like the temperature checks and all that. Did I catch that right?
Yes, we're planning to do that, and the idea would be
that Plan B, right?
Yeah, and the idea is that they could still be used during the day for other things, but just at ingress and egress, these become prime spaces because the security concerns of having the kids queuing. I mean, it's one of the reasons a lot of us don't do metal detectors, right? Because you don't want those long lines of kids vulnerable outside. And that was one thing, and we talked about this on that other webinar, is that we all have to remember that, just because COVID's here doesn't mean active shooter goes away, and we've got to keep that uppermost in our mind when we're thinking about things like queuing, is that none of those other threats have gone away, and we have to really be mindful of that. So the gyms
bullying,
become prime covered space. Bullying, exactly. And so those gyms become prime spaces for that kind of massive queuing.
So that's really, I have not heard that one before. That's interesting. So that's a good creative use of the large space that addresses one of the challenges of how do you, safely and effectively queue kids in large schools for egress and ingress. I actually want to pause you, Jeff, because I've had several questions come in. I want to make sure that we get to. One of the questions that came up, it's like a two-pronged question about, and this is going to be a big pivot. I'm going to cover a couple topics here, but I want to get to people's questions. First of all, are you allowing for parental choice on face-to-face or remote instruction? That's an isolated question. Are parents going to have an option if they don't want that in person? Will they always have an online option available to them?
Yeah, that is pivot.
That is.
But okay, so, and if people want to know more about this, they can visit the Huntsville City Schools website. But bottom line is this: we have created what is called HVA, Huntsville Virtual Academy. And parents have until the 29th of July to register for the Huntsville Virtual Academy. And we right now, that registration is on. Now, because we haven't, made our final decisions on what the reset looks like in terms of, okay, this is what we're going to do. Obviously a lot of parents are waiting on that decision until they figure out exactly, is it going to be every kid every day? Is it going to be A day, B day, whatever? But they've got till the 29th of July. And if they choose the full virtual, then they are in, that is where they are. They're, the virtual teachers, and they stay virtual, for their educational experience.
For the whole school year.
For the whole school year, right now, and right now there is there's going to be some. I mean, obviously, we don't want the case where people are just bouncing back and forth week to week. Obviously, that would play havoc with the school logistics as well. But there's some kind of time frame in there about how long you've got to stay before you can apply to switch back. But yes. Okay,
and then a couple other quick follow-ups here, and a couple of different questions. One was that's sort of like the parent buy-in. There was also a question that came in. Rob Olson was asking, what about buy-in from staff? How are you quantifying buy-in from staff on these different options? And I'm going to hang that question and go to the next couple setups there. And that's there's been a couple questions on sort of the cleaning side. I think this was stemming when you were talking about the coach with the gloves on, being very particular about the water bottles. So who's cleaning what? Like is on the disinfecting and cleaning side, is any of that being distributed out to other folks, even students or staff or other staff besides your janitorial staff, or is it your cleaning staff just sort of ramping up hours, ramping up folks? And then the third question that came in was about are staff required to wear masks? So kind of the refreshing questions that are coming in again is, how are you getting buy-in or assessing buy-in from staff? Who's doing what about cleaning? Is it all sort of as it was, but just the same people, but doing more? And then what's the mask strategy? So with those.
Well, buy-in from staff, I think obviously that's a continual process. I think people have been positive. I mean, to maybe throttle back a little or dial back a little bit, we brought most of our staff back to work the first week of June, and and a lot of the staff was in the buildings, even dialing back a bit more, late May. The last week of school, the week of like the 20th through the 25th of May, we did turn-in at the high schools and middle schools, and a lot of the staff were back for that, and that was drive-through, and again that was another opportunity for us to set processes, to have outside the school, around the school, like a ROTC bin for those, an athletics bin, if seniors needed to turn in a laptop, and so we didn't let anybody in the building, but we had several staff there for it. We had provided masks and gloves and trash bags to put the items in. So, I mean, we developed those procedures for handling stuff. The other thing that we did during that end of year closeout, obviously, and I'm sure this is true in every school system, the amount of stuff that the kids actually left in the schools when we close in March, that's all in plastic bags. And so during that week, the principals managed drive-by pickup, of your child's backpack. But again, all that was in plastic bags. When we brought the staff back, we established, the social distancing markings on the sidewalk. All the schools have a little table that they're crewing, in the lobby or in the bubble if they have one, where there's someone with the touchless thermometer. We're asking the questions, and then that makes everybody feel better. When the teachers went back that week to clear out their rooms, we said, look, everybody right now, as we're in this summer mode, what we are requiring is that staff mask when we are in the common areas. Unless I'm in my office, I'm masked. If I'm out in the school, I was out there this morning at a school. Right now, that is what we're doing in the summer. Obviously, anybody that is working with the kids in the athletics and extracurricular, they're masked. With our athletics and extracurricular right now, they are masked. The students are masked. Now, right now, I don't know yet what the decision will be for the fall as to, will we be encouraging masks among students and requiring it for faculty? That right now is not
TBD right now.
TBD, yeah. But that's where we are there. I think buy-in has been good. And I think, here's what I think, that everything we've done has given us more confidence that we can do the next thing. So, the first thing we did was the equipment turn in. And then the next thing we did was the end of year closeout. And then the next thing we did was the athletics and extracurricular. And now the next thing we're going to do is the special ed and driver's ed. I'm proud to say, I think, if anybody could correct me if I'm wrong, we may be the only school system in Alabama who's doing in-the-car driver's ed. And that's going to start the week of the 6th as well. Okay. And to be quite honest, where did we look for guidance for that? We downloaded some videos from professional driving schools, quite honestly. And, they had these seat covers and things. We're using large trash bags, and we had
improvising.
We've got a massive donation of cleaner/hand sand from Yellowhammer Brewing. They donated 10,000 gallons. It smells pretty strong, but it does a good job. But again, we developed those protocols, and so I guess with buy-in, I think that what our staff is seeing is that everything we have done is increasing the level of confidence that we're going to be able to do the next thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so, the two other questions that were coming in, and as we got about 10 minutes left or so, one was on the cleaning side. So what is your protocols right now about cleaning and disinfecting that you're considering, and who's doing it? Everybody that used to, or is that spread out a little bit, or other folks diving into that? And then the questions about buses. Are you screening before buses or after buses? What's your bus capacity? And then are you planning any questions that came in about your drilling, like for emergency response, fire drills, those kinds of things? Are any changes in those kind of procedures that you're anticipating?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just take that last one first. And, and when I walked around with the principals, several principals asked about that. And I've thus far not received any guidance from ALSDE on that. And quite honestly, that's on my list to get to. Obviously, those procedures may have to be, depending on the model we go to, have to be relooked, for every school district. But that's something that we've yet to get to. With the cleaning, and I think that, and this is where, I'm interested in what other people are facing too. Look, even with the CARES Act, I don't think any school system is all of a sudden doubling the size of their custodial staff, or, and nobody's pretending that there's going to be, toilet attendants and, like in London, train stations. I mean, there just can't be that, in a school setting. But what can there be? Well, one, I mean, our basic cleaning protocols, I think, are already pretty solid. And so, to be quite honest, with regard to, okay, here were our protocols yesterday and here are our protocols today, in terms of exactly what we're doing, maybe not so many changes. Frequency, yes. And here's where, and we've been very honest with the principals about this, that the teachers are going to have to do the intermittent cleaning during the day. I mean, and that, I think, is a fact of life in every school system. What is our charter in operations? It's to provide the materials, it's to provide the resources. It's to make sure that those classroom teachers always have, the towels, the cleaning, whether it's wipes. As you all know, wipes are really hard to get right now, but we do have a lot of the bottled cleaner, the paper towels, and the protocols within the classroom. I mean, and it's not just, how many times a day does the teacher have the kids wash their hands between activities, but it's, okay, we're doing this, okay, now teacher's going to squirt, kid's going to wipe, and we're going to clean the desk, we're going to do this, these kinds of things. And obviously looking different at different levels, right? But this is really this is a partnership, right? And given the fact that we don't right now have plans to, dramatically increase custodial staffing, but what we do, what we are doing is resourcing the schools. And, of course, one of the things we've worked all summer on is developing these sources of supply for hand sand, for masks, for face shields, for rubber gloves, for these other kinds of supplies that we'll need. But I would imagine that what I've just narrated is common throughout the country, especially in public education settings.
So Jeff, so on that one, so what you're saying is, in terms of it's not an increase in substance, there's increase in frequency, is one of the things you said in terms of what your custodial staff is doing. But then you also mentioned, teachers squirting and kids cleaning. So I'm assuming we're talking about, lighter cleaning solutions than your harshest chemicals, but sort of the in the classroom kind of cleaning. You're actually looking at having students and teachers participate in that, during the school day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And the other thing too, and I mean, and this is a conversation we're all having as well, is then obviously, we're paying, very close attention to, the things that we really are directing the custodians' attention to as we think about the school day. And, we're practicing this right now in the athletics and extracurricular, right? So, athletics and extracurricular, those field houses are getting two-a-days, if you will, because they're in constant use now. And so the custodians, like they are in all districts, I think, we're in the middle of that intensive deep clean, waxing, moving the furniture. I mean, that we would do even if it wasn't COVID.
Regardless,
but for the schools that are doing these activities, they're also having to break out and do, the field houses. And thank goodness we're not using locker rooms. We're not using locker rooms at all during this summer practice. And we I think there's going to be some reduced use of those kinds of spaces in the fall too, but yeah, the idea is that those common services, during the school day, wiping railings, et cetera, and so on. And I think we're also we're also obviously paying very close attention to, where we land on masking, because it is very interesting to me, and I guess I'm kind of philosophizing here. You all saw my background was in philosophy, but really, we're in a different place in terms of, what the doctors are really saying, in terms of what your real most effective risk mitigation is, right? I mean, so, I think 2 months ago we thought, the quickest way you were going to get COVID is if you touch something. And I think right now we're kind of at the quickest way we can get COVID is if somebody breathes on you who has it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so I mean, I'm not saying here that makes cleaning less important, but what I am worried about is that, and I mean, this is just me, Jeff Wilson, saying that I'm concerned. In fact, I was talking about this with some folks yesterday, that, as we go on, depending on what the masking protocol is, that, in all schools, we could see situations where the facilities teams are unfairly maligned, if there's, cases of COVID, where really, it's, well, but were you requiring masks, right? I mean, these kinds of things are, I mean,
operational decisions over capital decisions in some cases.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, interesting. So, Jeff, we got a couple minutes left here. I really appreciate you sharing that PowerPoint. We'll get it out to everybody. As you learn more about what's working well with your summer athletics program and what some hiccups are, any kind of adjustments you make. Would love to hear about that in subsequent weeks here, especially when you open your school on the 8th for the special education students. Again, like that's what we're really looking to move into the fall is, now that people are doing stuff, how's it going? So would love to hear about that as you go through. Is there other points that you wanted to share about something that you all have been doing for your plan that you wanted to share before we wrapped up for today?
Well, just, and I'm still sharing my screen, right? You can see these pictures?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. I can see
one thing, just a couple of quick things. One, sure. I want to just reinforce that, when I heard that webinar the first time, is a lot of information, but when we actually laid out the school, and this is how we're laying it out for the special education program, I mean, just for everybody out there, when you actually try it, it can work. It seems like, oh man, we could never do that. But people, once they actually start to use the framework, it could really look like this. And you don't have to move all the furniture either, because keeping some of that furniture in there even increases your awareness of the social distancing. So that's one thing. Don't be afraid of it. You could really do this. Second thing is, for all the vendors who are sending you stuff about, hey, buy our $249.95 barrier, have your maintenance department, and we have a man named Billy Priest who's amazing. Every ad I get, I send it to him and say, how could you make something like that? And this is our maintenance department has made these shields using basically shower curtain material and PVC pipe. And this is for the speech teachers to work one kid and one teacher on either side of the barrier there. So I guess that's one thing. Buses, we have a rubric. Here's our rubric for buses: 1 kid per seat, every seat, cohabitating students 2 per seat. And I had the transportation coordinator do a detailed set of spreadsheets. It took him a week and a half, but he did it using the 1920 ridership, and we figured out that we could we would have to add about 10 buses to do an A day, B day, with the routes we had last year. But we also figured this: if we lost 25% of our 1920 bus ridership, we could to virtual, we could do the A day, B day, running every route every day, 1 kid per seat, except for cohabitating students with existing buses. So I guess the only message I have is that once you start to get to it, it can be done.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're looking at a 50% bus capacity as a basis, but you can 2 kids in a seat if they're cohabitating. And
it's a little less than 50,
a little less than 50, okay.
Yeah, a little less than 50%, and in all of this, what we're trying to do is put our maximum effort in planning for the hardest thing. And then, and I figured if we could get a good rubric for, what would that A day, B day look like from the bus to the school door every single day, and plan for that in reimagining your spaces and all that stuff. If you could plan for that and think you could do that, well then, we know we can do the full virtual, and we also know we can, if we have to do every kid every day, obviously the cleaning protocols we have are going to be, the center of attention. But plan for that hard thing, even if it doesn't seem like a likely course of action right now.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I really like the challenge to your custodial staff and maintenance staff here. Can you build this? I love that roll up your sleeves gumption at this time. And then I'm going to go ahead. We're a couple minutes past. Mary Filardo, by the way, folks, she sent me a text, and she had her kids needed an emergency babysitter, and so she had to go play grandma duty this afternoon at the last minute. So she sends her apologies for not being here, but we will get her on next week and give you a brief update. She just wanted to talk a little bit about the bill in the House, passed the House here, and we'll talk to you a little bit about some resources we're looking to get together for the fall, and some things we might ask of you folks as well in getting data. But since we're a couple of minutes past, I'm going to let one last question from the group be our capstone, and that has to do with the nursing area. Len Colliner asked, is the nursing area being reconfigured or reconsidered? I imagine that's something that you want to look at in the queuing system, Jeff, as you're bringing folks into the big gym. If somebody tests positive, I'm assuming they're going to need to go somewhere. Is that a reconstituted, reconfigured nursing station right out of the gym? What are you thinking there?
What we're just calling it is the health monitoring room, and it's various, at first it was quarantine room, then it was, no, we're not going to call it that. And then we went to safe room, but then everybody thought that was the tornado shelter. But now we're going to call it the health monitoring room. And what we're doing is, what we asked every principal to do as part of this reset configuration analysis is to pick a room that already has hot and cold running water, doesn't have to have a bathroom, but a lot of them do, and just say, look, we're not doing renovations for this. You're going to have to make the hard call. And they did. And so every school is designated the health monitoring room, because it can't be the nurse's office, obviously, because that space has got to be reserved for the things the nurse is already doing. And so the idea is that if you have, a case in the line, you bring them right in there under supervision, and if there's more than one, you may have to put more than one in there for a brief time.
For a short time.
Yeah, but that's the answer.
Okay. Well, Jeff, again, really appreciate your time today and fielding the Q&A and great questions coming in from the group. As always, very much appreciate that. We will, Jeff, I appreciate you sending me an email with this presentation. We'll shotgun it out to everybody so you can have this resource. Look forward to tuning in with you and hearing more how the summer's going. Everyone, again, thanks for your time here today. Look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks,
Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.